Welcome to this somewhat extended video on the poem Farmer's Bride by Charlotte Moo. This is from the AQA Love and Relationships Anthology Poetry Unit. It's a longer poem, so I will go straight in rather than reading, as you will be aware. So, look, this is quite a strange poem, really. It's a poem that deals with, obviously, sort of patriarchal sort of control. It's a poem that deals with, female sort of oppression, but it's done in a sort of questioning way. And what I mean by that is, I guess the question at the heart of this, with the speaker being a man, right? The speaker's a man, and you know the story of the poem, The Farmer's Bride, about a man whose bride basically doesn't want to be with him, but has to be with him because he's chosen her, and everyone thinks that the man is always right. But as we move through the poem, I guess what we start to see is that there's a sadness. And I'm not saying let's feel sorry for the farmer necessarily, but there is a sadness that the farmer feels, particularly at the end, with the lack of children. And I guess the poet is raising some questions about why have we established society to be like this, as it was back then. Why have we established society to be like this, where both parties are unhappy, but neither can escape this situation, right? So I guess it's a criticism of society and the kind of suffering society in regards to romance, the suffering that society brings to both men and women. Now, the title sets us up for what would be typically just this kind of patriarchal controlling poem, because it's the farmers, and you'll note the possessive here, the farmer's bride. There's a sense that she is owned, yeah, or that she's a possession herself, right? The farmer's bride. Farmers obviously implying that kind of rural background. First line, 3 summers since I chose a maid. So the I comes in, this controlling speaker. 3 summers, you'll note that he counts in seasons to reflect the kind of farming background. A maid chose, so chose as in to choose, to pick a maid. And there's a kind of innocence in that language there. Too young, maybe. And that's where we start to see too young. So there's a naivety. Now, people obviously did get married a lot younger back then, particularly women. But more's to do at harvest time than bide and woo. So he can see that he's really focused on farming. When us was wed, she turned afraid. So we see that fear emerge. This description of the maid as being frightened of love and me and all things human. So she's almost like kind of rejecting humanity, possibly because what we're seeing is the kind of dark side of humankind, like the shot of a winter's day. Once again, another little kind of natural rural imagery to reflect the farmer's background. Her smile went out, and want woman was more like a frightened little fay. A fay, of course, is a little fairy. So we see that vulnerability. One night in the fall, she runned away. Okay, and you'll notice his own kind of his lexical choices reflect his rural accent, But she runs away. She tries to escape. Okay, so there's a desire here, isn't there, for freedom. Out among the sheep she be, they said, should probably have been a bed. But sure enough, she weren't there, lying awake with her brown stare. Once again, that fear emerging. We hear the kind of conversations of the villagers. Okay, and they're obviously supportive of the farmer. So over 7 acre field and up along across the down, we chased her flying like a hare before our lanterns to Churchtown. Chased her like a flying like a hare. So she's kind of almost through this simile, sort of conflated with an animal, something to be caught. Again, coming back to this idea of possession. All in a shiver and a scare, we caught her, fetched her home at last, and turned the key upon her fast. Right, so she's trapped. Now, where do we go from here? Well, she does the work about the house as well as most, but like a mouse. Right, so she is here, um, back under the ownership and control of the farmer, doing what she's supposed to do, the work, this kind of domestic duty, like a mouse. Again, animalistic language, her kind of quiet weakness almost kind of being displayed here. Happy enough to chat and play with birds and rabbits and such as they, so long as menfolk keep away. There's a childishness here, and what I mean is that the speaker seems confused. Now, what we, I guess, getting the implication is this is not the way that other people's wives act. Why is it that mine is like this? And this is what I mean about society being questioned here, because I'm not saying that what the farmer has done is correct at all, but he can only operate within the confines of the society that he exists within. And he's being presented with an opportunity, with a situation that nobody else has. Not near, her eyes beseech, so we have almost this like personification of her eyes, speaking here. When one of us comes within reach, the women say that beasts in stall look round with children at her call. I've never hardly heard her speak at all. So this is where that sadness comes in. He gets no love, basically. We see that rhyme here as well, these three: call, stall, all. There's almost like a kind of a synergy here that is not reflected in his relationship. Very sad. Sad for both. Right. Shy as a leveret, swift as he, straight and slight as a young larch tree, sweet as the first wild violet she to her wild self, but what to me? Again, this speaker gets no love, he's neglected. The day's shorn and the oaks are brown. So we're seeing that this is obviously continuing over time. One leaf in the air still falls slowly down as a magpie spotted feathers lie on the black earth spreads white with rime. All of this sort of natural imagery to show how life continues without their connection, right? Life goes on, life keeps moving, they don't grow any closer, and no children arrive. And that's obviously very upsetting for the speaker. And probably for her as well, in the sense that, she doesn't want to have children with this man. Why has she got to be married to him? Well, she sleeps in the attic there, right? Distant, even physically within the home. All alone, poor maid, 'tis but a stair betwixt us. Oh my God, the down, the soft young down of her, the brown of her eyes, her hair, her hair, her hair. And we see here again, there's a kind of tenderness, a tender desire that he cannot communicate. So if we're just thinking very briefly about the structure of this poem, the relationship grows in distance. Okay, this is not one where they get closer together. If you're thinking, for example, something like What Winter Swans, where they start far apart and then get closer and closer, this one they start, well, not close here, and get further and further apart. Fascinating little poem.